Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone listening to us today. My name is Reem Qasim. I'm your moderator for this session. I'm a co-founder of Bosita and a performing arts programmer at the Cultural Foundation in Abu Dhabi. Our session today is titled Strategic Partnerships and Collaborations. And we have three speakers. We have today Hiba Hajfelder, who is a senior program manager at the Arab Fund for Arts and Culture. We have Rathi Jaffer, director of Inku Center in India. And we have also Raed Serhan, culture manager, Red Bull Jordan. I would like to start this session by asking Hiba, representing one of the leading institutions that support artists and cultural institutions in the Arab region and beyond, about her point of view of what are the forms of strategic partnerships and alliances that she sees missing in the cultural sector in our region and even globally.
Thank you, Reem, and thank you for hosting us on this exciting platform. As you probably know, the region is quite weak in terms of public funding, in terms of incentives that can support the arts and culture sector. And one of the critical areas in terms of creating and developing more strategic partnerships is to have diverse partners supporting the sector. And so one of the gaps, but also one of the great potentials, is to encourage more individual philanthropists. And there's so many of them in this region. People who share values related to freedom of expression, who want to nurture creativity in the region and want to see it grow. And there's so much talent out there that can be supported through a diversity of partnerships. The other sometimes missing possibility is the involvement of the private sector and the potential it has to invest in terms of impact investment, and to see that the kind of funding which goes to support artistic works and artistic projects is about social investment. And I think there's a lot of potential that can happen there. That said, despite the dearth or the gaps in public funding, a lot of donors, and we have long-standing donors at AFA, have been supporting the sector and have kept it alive. And we're very thankful for those who see the value and the importance of supporting more long-term and unrestricted, meaning supporting core operations of institutions. I can give examples, but maybe I give back the floor to you in a minute.
Okay, so yeah, maybe give us a few examples.
Okay, and this is to talk about something that has happened, which is very positive in a crisis situation, and where you see how partners come together to address needs, but also priorities, and to think beyond the crisis into the stage where we're talking about early recovery or post-crisis. The health pandemic, I think, brought everyone on their knees, and the arts and culture sector, being very much part of a local economy, of the local society, was terribly affected. One of the things we did in AFAG, aside from adapting our own programs to make sure that we can be responsive, is to think together with other partners. In this case, it was AFAG and Culture Resource, Al-Mawrid Al-Thaqafi, who came together and said, what is it that we can do in a crisis situation like the one exemplified by Lebanon, where you not only have a health pandemic, you also have a 30-year economic and financial crisis that's now compounded by confinement, by a terrible political situation. And so the two regional partners said, let's come together and create an initiative in solidarity of arts and culture organizations in Lebanon. And this is what happened. And this call was so well received that we have 3 of our common long-standing donors on board. So Open Society Foundation, Sport Foundation, Androsus Foundation, who are generously supporting this joint initiative. And with this fund, we aim to support 23 independent cultural entities in Lebanon. So this is one example, the Lebanon Solidarity Fund. The other one, and this time it's not only with our long-standing partners, but also with the private sector. It's the Artist Support Grant, which aims to support around 150 artists across the Arab region who are affected by the pandemic and who want to continue working and may not have the means to do so. And this partnership, in addition to some of our institutional donors like Ford Foundation and Open Society Foundations, was made possible because of the strategic partnership with Spotify. And Spotify is matching all the donations earmarked for music. And we've created a page under Giving Loop. So we're also exploring crowdfunding. And so in times of crisis, one has to look at different funding mechanisms and call on different partners and friends to support, but also to create throughout the years the type of partnerships that allow you to respond in times of crisis in an effective way.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Hiba. That takes me to the topic sector resilience. And when we all were under lockdown in March, I started doing some research on sector resilience. And there are several people who have mentioned to me in this during the research that an arranged marriage has to happen between the private sector, culture sector, public sector, and we have to all come together in a different way during such a period. And so my next question is to Rathi. And I want to ask you, what are the tactics in your point of view that the sector should have developed earlier? And if the sector had developed those tactics, it could have been more resilient in the face of such a crisis.
Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Thanks for having me on this panel with my co-panelists, all of whom come with some wonderful experience, and looking forward to a lot of learning on this session and hopefully contributing as well. I want to set in context the work I do currently. I head the Indo-Korean Cultural and Information Center in India, in Chennai, India, South India. And I used to work before that for about 10 years with the British Council, making links between South India and the UK more specifically. And the learning points from both these assignments has been exactly how to find that equitable balance between private and public partnership. And I liked your word of an arranged marriage, because I think, as opposed to a love marriage, I suppose, they both in terms of expectations and in terms of boundaries, there are some things which are set in place and need to be set in place for smooth sailing. So in India, as you know, because of the diversity of the arts, a lot of which are in the informal sector, there isn't exactly a kind of a fund set up, although there is a Ministry of Culture. It works pretty much in silos. We've not yet moved to a stage where the creative sector is seen as a creative industry contributing to economy. Therefore, it still remains tantalizingly on that edge of non-essential. And we've got to fight all the time to make, through our projects, make people and our stakeholders aware of just how essential this is. So when we say ephemerally that it's about changing hearts and minds, it's about keeping a positive frame of mind. In this pandemic, it's about wellness and, not allowing yourselves to get locked down mentally. All of this is very difficult to quantify. And in terms of all impact studies, you know that it's not just the quantitative numbers we're looking at. Qualitatively, it becomes really difficult to quantify. So when we work, and especially with this particular assignment with the INCO Center, it's a rather unique model where it's completely funded by corporate support. And it's corporate support for the arts, and it's corporate social responsibility and all of that terrain that comes with it. With the government, it's been pretty much arm's length. It's been about bringing them in terms of administrative, to clear administrative hurdles, to make sure that large festivals can happen in open spaces where you need permissions, for instance. You need to have them to not really interfere with that independent space that you have. So I think it's about that critical move of partnerships, partners being defined more as partners rather than sponsors, especially when it comes to the corporates who we have on board. So we are supported by the two, from the Korean side, it's the Hyundai Motor India, the HMIL in India, which is the largest, second largest in terms of automotive, both domestically as well as in terms of exports, and TVS Motor Company, which is the third largest bike company in India, with plants in Germany and other parts of the world, Indonesia and other parts of the world. So the question that begs answer is that why should these companies really think it's important to support the arts? And what about the offering that you make is really enhancing their brand through a sort of dotted line in terms of positively changing people's mindsets, understanding and appreciating Korea and India, and thereby, by extension, Korean Indian products. But having said that, we will staunchly not have, products lined up. We will not have eyeball spaces for any of this. We will work with them as valued partners, each one bringing a certain something to the table.
Yes.
So I want to emphasize on that aspect of equitable partnership with government and the private and public sector, because otherwise it can get very badly skewed. And that independent space for artists, which is very precious and needs to be protected and respected, nurtured, will be at risk.
Yes, of course, it can be very challenging for artists to find a common language with either the government sector or the public sector. That's really, I've seen so many examples where artists, they are, at the end, they are forced to do something that they don't believe in, or something that doesn't necessarily meet their mission as an artist, or their artistic career mission.
I completely agree. And actually, in Co-Center, we play that intercedary role. Our logo itself, which carries the colors of both countries, are actually like a bridge. So as a bridge between artistic endeavor and aspiration, ambition, and then converting it into the language of what corporates might take on or the government might listen to, is, I think, a very critical role. So it isn't a direct, when we take up a project, the proposals come from the artists, but the presentation, there is an intervention there. So in the manner in which it is put across, so that both sides know what to expect from this. Nobody goes away disappointed, or nobody goes away, and there's no hierarchy there in terms of somebody forcing. Most often it is, forced upon the artist. So we would like to prevent that at all costs.
Yeah.
So we do a combination of presenting work, full-fledged work, allowing for Indo-Korean collaborations, and touring where it comes in both countries and beyond. So when it goes beyond, then it's outside our remit of funding. But within, there's a lot of scope for research and development and support, both for independent artists as well as for those who, come up on performing arts platforms where you can go. In Seoul, every year there is a performing arts market which happens, where you go there and you can meet and talk to people and then invite them on equitable terms to your country. So we do a combination of all of this because we feel in the trajectory, all of it is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that also takes me to my question to Raed about, from your point of view as an ex-musician and also as a founder of the culture department in Red Bull Jordan, maybe you can share with us some of the models you have adapted to support the musicians. We all know that Red Bull is one of the biggest companies that organize some music events and support the musicians as well. But at the same time, it's a private sector company, and how these models have had long impact on the musicians' careers.
First of all, thank you, Reem, for moderating this session, and thank you for hosting me with this lovely panel. To answer your question, first you must identify the right talent. So what does that mean? Non-commercial and developing artists with potential, artists that have the drive and ambition to put in the work. See, artists have to start treating the music industry for what it is, which is an industry, a business. And you can't survive in it if you look at it from one side. You need to have a business side covered as well. Have a business plan, market yourself, which shouldn't be too hard nowadays with social media. And you know, that sounds bad to some musicians and like they're selling out, but sometimes you have to play the game to have a fighting chance. Have a part-time job, create a side business to increase your longevity in your music career if it's struggling. Each artist is a brand, and just like any company, you need to grow that brand. So once we've identified the right talent, we look at what's missing. Is it a mastered EP, producing a record, social media presence, maybe the right venue or festival to perform at, more exposure? Depending on these factors, either we provide the artists with studio time, assist in the recording of their music, or push their social media platforms through hours and hour connections, or produce events around them where all the attention is focused on them through a 360 campaign. Now, after that, we just go to continuity. Once we've started working with an artist, we keep supporting them. We keep supporting them through thick and thin, trying our best to bring their ideas to life, as long as they're active and willing to put in the work. I mean, let's face it. I mean, these days, I mean, you could become irrelevant in 2 to 3 months because it's just fast-paced, fast-moving. So you need to stay out there. You need to keep making music and keep raising the value of your brand as a musician and just stay relevant.
Yes, exactly. And staying relevant also makes me ask, I understand that now the music business is facing lots of challenges due to canceling the events, postponing the events, especially the events that have large number of audiences, big public events. And that makes me curious, and I'm sure that so many other cultural managers are curious as well, to ask, how are you going to build on the success that you have already achieved by readapting new strategies during this time?
Okay, like I said earlier, you need to stay active and out there to stay relevant. So we just moved everything online. Live performances with artists, interesting stories about them, content that revolves around them as people and their music. Of course, it's not the same as the real thing, but as long as you keep the fans engaged and the musicians working and getting paid, then it's good enough for the time being. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, have you been finding any challenging in doing that? Because I'm asking because from my personal experience also here in the UAE with the Cultural Foundation, we've also moved all our programs online. We've been programming young bands, also international artists and local pop stars like Qasim Seher, Hussein Al Jasmi, and we've been struggling in
numbers.
Achieving high viewership. At the beginning, people were under lockdown. There were curfews, so yes, they were watching sometimes, not the full performance. But now we're finding it challenging, and we feel that the social dynamics are changing rapidly, and we need to, as you said, keep up to what's going on.
Yeah. See, the thing is. The thing is about everything moving online. I mean, it was in time of necessity, just to keep everyone engaged and to keep the artists working as well. But the thing is, you're missing the human element. And that's why, in my opinion, online will never work and it will never replace the real thing. I mean, if you look at the statistics, if 85 to 90% of people go to festivals to see other people, for the atmosphere, for other people, not just to watch the artist on stage. That's a huge part of it, but also they want to be engaged in the whole experience. They want to experience this thing. But when you move everything online, you're losing the human element of it, which makes it difficult. And now with YouTube and all the platforms, you can just go on any platform at any time and watch a full concert for any artist you want around the world, at your own convenience, rather than just waiting for someone to do something online live. And at the same time, you'll watch it during a real concert where you can actually see the crowd. But what people want to do, they want to interact with others. They want to see other people. So maybe an integration through Zoom, for instance, where you can see other people online and their reactions to such a live performance would make it more interesting.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Rod. So, yeah, and as we say, sometimes this disruption helps us stop, think, evaluate, rethink things and plan, make new strategies. And here I would like to ask Hiba, at this time, do you think that we should take some new actions to build new strong alliances or new forms of partnerships for the sector?
Thank you, Reem. Part of developing resilience in crisis is actually doing a lot before a crisis happens. I mean, one of the gaps that we find, because AFALC has been in operation for longer than 13 years, and we've invested heavily in cultural creativity and productivity, but there's still so much to do in terms of making those artistic works, whether it's in music or theater or dance or photography or film, to make them heard and seen. As Raed was just saying, in terms of having people access those festivals and events, but also offering opportunities for young people to engage in the sector. And so one major gap that remains is the whole concept of distribution and circulation. And for this, what we find missing is not only the public infrastructure that should stand to create a platform where more people have access to culture, but also the type of support that small and medium cultural institutions would need to build within their own local context strong entities that can engage with an audience, that can entice people to be involved in cultural projects. In that sense, building an ecosystem requires not only grants for individuals, but also support to local cultural entities. And the only way to do that is to have this diverse partnership base and to get people on board to see arts and culture not only as an add-on, but something very integral to people's well-being. And in our region, the news that often hits us is about wars and calamities and repression, violence, gender inequalities, you name it. But it would be much more interesting to also see what does it take to put in place the very open spaces and civic spaces and to grow and nurture them so that people have something else to fall back on and to see that even in those dire contexts, there's so many talents that are out there that need to be given the space to perform and to create. And so in that sense, the kind of sustained partners and donors, whether they're institutions or government agents or individual philanthropists or the private sector, they need to come together and make sure that their joint resources are put at the service of the sector. One thing we did during the crisis, and this I would like to just develop an idea that Raed was talking about. I mean, the online platform has both its positive and negative sides, but what we found was that when people were confined, there was so much more hunger and eagerness to go online because that was the only space that ironically, a lot of artistic works got to be seen. A lot of films were watched and music was heard. As an example, what we did in AFALC was a 5-week streams program where we showcased many of our artists that we've supported in the past and had their work visible. And so there is this positive aspect to it, but I would agree with Raed that nothing replaces the kind of cultural spaces and the type of events and venues that bring people together, that make us share these moments of happiness, but also to critically look at what ills and ailments are in society.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, but I also have some, experiences from when I used to work in Egypt. I used to head the performing arts department at the Library of Alexandria, and I had an NGO called Agora that used to organize public space festivals. And for a period of 7 years, I've tried to work with disadvantaged communities and engage women who were under fragile or under risk, unemployed, work with street children, and so many very, very fragile target groups. And now I'm here, and my colleagues in Egypt have continued the mission. But I keep hearing that during this time, so many cultural institutions in Egypt are shutting down. Maybe 2 or 3 are still a bit resilient. And yes, more or less. And those independent cultural institutions are unable to continue. They are not only, if they were able to sustain themselves and be a little bit resilient in the face of the system and the policies, now, given the crisis, the health crisis, it has become really very difficult, because also funding has been cut, and it's always culture is always the first thing that gets cut when there is a financial crisis.
That is very true.
Yeah, unfortunately. And having thought about, having said this, I may be repeating myself, but I keep thinking about how can the sector become really more resilient, so that in the future, because we've been working a lot during the past decade, and I don't want to say that we are hitting a reset button. I don't want to say that, but I feel that we are about to reset. So that when the time comes after another decade to reset again, the sector is more resilient. What do you think? What can the sector do to avoid hitting the reset button again? Maybe this is an open question to the 3 of you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Please.
Yeah. I want to just pick up on what Raid said about the human element, which makes it so completely different in terms of experience. You're sitting in a darkened auditorium, you're waiting for the artist to come up there. There's a connect that happens, and you're literally feeding off each other in terms of energy. When you're consuming art online, music online in this instance, of course, the magic is there depending on how your camera angles are, how it's placed, what the audio reception is, how your internet is, etc., etc. But leaving all that aside, there may be somebody at the door who needs your attention. You stop it and come back again. You're consuming art in a very, very different way. And the impact therefore is also very, very different. It is very important to make the transition during these troubled, unsettling times, because you don't want to be out of sight, out of mind. But also to keep in mind that there is a tremendous sense of fatigue when we do something that is, in a sense, a little unnatural. Even this conversation, I would love to be sitting across the table in a room talking to all of you, but we do it because this is a situation and the condition we are under. But there's no, I think we shouldn't kid ourselves that it's just an easy transition, and whatever we've done, we could just now bring it online and look at the numbers and then stay happy that we are still connected. The pandemic has asked us to hit the pause button and to reflect on our practices. I don't know whether it would be reset. I think we will go back to having parallel tracks. It also means when we are revisiting something that we've done, like for example, quite recently in February, we had a wonderful tour with Korean and Indian musicians and a very famous Indian dancer. It was called Same, Same, But Different. And this was a global project, and this was India's turn to be part of it. The Korean group Noramachi had worked with very many groups all over the world to do different segments of this project. And what it essentially meant is that through research and development, through residencies in both countries, this was very carefully, respectfully developed and then toured toured all around Korea and then toured all around India. So it went to iconic buildings. It worked with musicians in other cities. It had such an expansive feel to it, which when we brought online, we realized very quickly that first of all, when what we had videographed was meant not for streaming, but it was meant for our own archival purposes. So it meant that we had to repurpose that, put the whole thing together more as producer rather than presenter, so that you could simulate somewhat the excitement of that performance without, having any discredit to the program per se. So I think there's a lot of reflective thinking required in the manner in which we pick and choose what we aim to place online. But also understand that online presence is very important. Whether it's going to be transitory, we don't know. Whether it's going to become another complementary strand, but definitely next time post-pandemic, when we record something, we're going to be doing it with 3 cameras. Hopefully have a budget to do it that way. But then, that's how you will be doing it in the event of you might having to show this online. Yeah. So we might make those very administrative, technical shifts. And whether the touring circuit will come on, I don't know. Taking Heba's point, we've always worked with local and national partners. So they're all in this. We're all in this together. We've never presented any program on our own. And developing those parts, a lot of money and time has gone into investing on building those relationships. So now when we are in this situation, we're all hand-holding to say we understand where you're coming from. What is it that we can do to pitch in to keep every one of us afloat?
Yeah. Well, from my end, concerning sector resilience, I've been, I'm currently doing my PhD, and it is about resilience. I started it 1 year ago, and it has never been more relevant than now. And from my end, when we started the lockdown, I thought that the sector has to have a tool to navigate the future. And having thought about this, I immediately initiated and co-founded Basita with 2 other colleagues, where we think that maybe Basita would become a tool for the cultural sector to be a bit more resilient, in the sense of being able to generate income if budget cuts persist. Because from what I'm seeing here in the UAE, for example, and UAE is quite a generous country when it comes to supporting culture. Budgets are being cut. We are unable to program our programs until end of the year are being postponed and cancelled because there are more priorities. So, and we were debating, what about artists who live in the UAE? If we are unable to fly in artists from abroad, what about the artists who live in the UAE and their only source of income is performing or doing their art? So yeah, that's from my end. What I've tried to contribute to helping the sector become more resilient. So maybe Rafi, can you share with us your experience? Some of your projects where you explored the concept of culturepreneurship?
Okay, this is something which actually underpins most of our work. And as I said, Inco Center music is one part of the work that we do. We also work with theater, dance, ceramic sculpture, painting. So it's visual arts and performing arts, with several partners, about roughly 20 in Korea and in India, and going from the local to regional to national. So just to name a few, if it is the Korea Foundation, which is supported by the government, but it is specifically been set up to support the arts and the artistic endeavor in Korea, or the Arts Council in Korea, or the Korea Arts Management Service, or the Film Council, etc., depending on the genre. Likewise, in India, we would have local partners who are presenting festivals. We would have, so we wouldn't necessarily reinvent a festival. We would make sure we have a strong Korean presence at that festival, or an Indo-Korean collaborative piece if we have worked to develop one. Yeah. So by culturepreneurship, what we meant is actively looking at how the cultural sector can interweave and work alongside private public, what we spoke about earlier, with corporate social responsibility, because in India, I don't know how it is in your part of the world, but in India, there is by law, companies beyond a certain, when they have a certain profit in place, they can get a tax rebate by supporting cultural endeavor. What comes under corporate social responsibility is probably the same. And that varies in terms of the sector that you're looking at, whether it's health or education or culture. Now, what makes it very difficult, this is very good because this is one way of pitching for funds, and they know that they are going to be, or they will be getting a very concrete benefit by doing so. And there's also a direct link to society. But as with all of these very well-intentioned laws, it is so obfuscated and so difficult to understand that very often companies are not aware of what exactly qualifies for this, and neither is the cultural sector. So one of the things we're doing is really to sort of, bear that down and bring out the main facts to say, okay, here is why you need to support this. The risk of placing everything on CSR is also that at times like this, when the economy is hard hit, as you rightly said, culture is what takes the hardest hit and the first hit. And therefore, we've got to continue making the point that this is important. And while we may not make plans which go so much overboard that we ask for a huge hike in support, we will at least keep it even so that we don't rock the boat. And I'm really happy to say that all of the companies, so the main two companies I mentioned, we've got about 48 small and medium companies, Korean, about 10 Indian small and medium, all maybe vendor companies to these big companies. But whatever we do, the support has been incredible. And we have had to also therefore be very careful in the kind of projects we take up to see that there is a direct link, not just to the community of artists, but to society at large. So for instance, if we are not a grant making body, so we can't directly support artists in distress with a grant, but we will make sure that some kind of work comes through which is monetized. So even if it is a performance online, it will be under contract, it will be monetized. If it's a virtual collaboration, there will still be an honorarium and a fee going into it, etc. So minus the physical tours, we will try to do all other things. So with Culturepreneurship, I thought more in terms of encouraging entrepreneurial, innovative ventures, but also looking at the concept of enterprise. So enterprise, like Raid rightly said, as an industry, there is a monetary factor to it. There is revenue. There is, artists always fight shy of this. We've had several examples where we have collaborations and they say, oh, we don't mind doing this for free. And we said, don't ever do that because you'll skew the pitch. For somebody else coming in after you, it's going to be very difficult to demand a fee. But be reasonable. So we just take as the sort of middle ground to say, when we are talking to partners and potential funders and artists, let's be realistic about our expectation and not undercut anybody. So don't overprice yourself, but don't undersell yourself either.
Yeah, we are trying to do the same at the Cultural Foundation here, where all our online performances are, the artists, they get a fee. Of course, it's a bit less than their normal fee if it's a physical performance. And this is also the reason why we have established Basita, because through Basita, artists can put their content online while being able to charge their audiences a ticket. So it functions as if it's a normal venue, but virtual venue, so that we can ensure an income generation mechanism for artists. Maybe also I can share with you another partnership format that we are trying to explore. We are still exploring during this period, which is like a triangle of partnership between donors, venues or cultural institutions, and our platform, where we are aiming at having the donors support the institution or the venue, so that the venue can bring in young artists or artists in general to support them by giving them the venue to film their performances and upload it online for the artist to generate the income through the platform and the online ticketing platform. So we're trying now to establish this format of partnership, because we understand that also the venues are struggling. They have canceled their performances, and now some venues are open but with a very limited number of seats, and some of them have after some surveys, we've understood that some of them may not even be able to survive with this 30% or 50% of selling their house. So they still need to sell more than the 50% or 30% capacity. So we are trying now at this moment to explore this new format of partnership to see if it's going to be a good idea or a sustainable idea that would help institutions, venues, and artists maybe generate some income and be more resilient until this wave passes by. Yeah, so back to you, Raed. Maybe you can tell us if there is one thing that institutions could do to ensure the sustainability of the big music festivals, and that the ones that have large number of attendees that obviously have been disrupted at this moment. What could it be?
Well, it would be the same phrase everyone's been using for the past 5 months, which is social distancing. You'd have to use larger spaces of land, use outdoor venues only, and fewer people per square meter. Though I don't think that's going to be possible until something changes or a vaccine is found to be feasible. I mean, I don't think it's going to be feasible to do right now. People will still be either afraid to go out, or it'll be too costly for some festivals to get even larger spaces for less people, because less ticketing means, less revenue, and it could take a toll on a lot of promoters and a lot of festival owners. I'd say we would have to wait this one out. And for anyone that's trying to do something online the next time, I would recommend wait till festivals are back, get a couple of people, strap loads of cameras on them, have them walk around the festival, and once, if God forbids, or whoever, just if a pandemic hits again or something like that happens, sell the VR experience for festivals. Maybe that could be something interesting for people to try at home when they can't go out anymore. To go, I've never been to a festival, but okay, I'd like to try the virtual reality, festival, and see what's that all about. Maybe while sitting at home, seeing other people walking around a festival as if I was there. Maybe that would be something interesting, or that could be the next step in doing that. But as for real festivals, I'd say we'd have to wait till at least 2021 and see what happens then.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Also through those surveys that we've been doing, we've heard that we've read that because of the income has been affected, family income has been affected. So, for example, if you are a father and you want to go to a festival with your wife and like two kids, and you will be obliged to buy 4 tickets after the pandemic and the effect on some jobs, maybe this will not be possible, no longer possible at all. And some people have told us that they now prefer the home-based entertainment more than going out to events or festivals. So maybe the VR experience would be something that could be explored in the future, and would be beneficial for some households who have been affected heavily, or whose income have been affected heavily through the pandemic.
That's true, but again, I think that as long as people can go out, and I can talk about from experience, at least in Jordan, what I've seen, people are hungry for events, people want to go out. They just want to be out there and they want to do something. They want to go to festivals. They want to go to concerts. They want to go back to the normal and regular lifestyles. They don't want to be cooped up at home. Even if it costs them, they're willing to do it at this point.
Yeah.
So I think it's always going to be second best. Anything online is going to be second best to the real thing, and it will never replace it, unfortunately.
Yes. Let's hope that everything will come back to close to normal very soon. And maybe we can check. Yes, please.
Sorry, Reem, I just wanted to comment on what Raed was saying. I think the virtual reality experience would be fabulous. But in a country like India, for instance, beyond urban cities, and again, a cross-section of the urban populace, just having the technology to experience this will be quite daunting. At the moment, we're facing this, in fact, right, with when we do online classes and demos and things like that, that we have so many people who are hungry for it, want to join, but they don't have the necessary smartphone or a high-speed internet connection or whatever it may be. And that's a huge stumbling block. So wondering how we can present it, although it's a fabulous idea. And I think we are going to have to invest in technology in a manner in which it humanizes, if that's the word, the humanizes the experience, rather than technology which is flashy and overwhelms. How can this be used as a tool to humanize the experience and get it to us in as close a fashion as possible, I guess.
Yeah.
If I can just, may I, Reem?
Yes, of course.
If I can just add, I mean, one dimension of dealing with the topic of, what makes resilience happens is that sometimes we get caught into thinking about the macro level of things, the sector, when in fact what we can try to do, and this is something as a regional organization, we have the privilege of seeing all of these incredible local small initiatives, collectives, institutions, is to try and reinforce their own standing, their own existence, basically, because what happens in a crisis like the pandemic or in a war situation is that cultural entities to a large extent have very needs to fall back, and so the rate at which they may shut down or close their operations or lose their spaces is so high that what we can as a regional organization, or if we're thinking about strategic partnerships, is to plan ahead and try to reinforce those institutions even before a crisis hits. And part of the resilience is that in a region like ours is that these institutions have time to reconsider what are the options. If it's a health pandemic, if it's a war zone like what we see in so many places like Yemen and Syria and Sudan today. I mean, the idea is to make sure that they have the tools at hand and they have the sustained support to re-examine what makes them relevant in their communities and how best can they adapt within their local resources and networks. One of the programs that we had running since 2018 and which is, we're very lucky to have had a partner who saw this long-term vision with us, is the Arts and Culture Entrepreneurship Program, which does exactly that. It tries to put these institutions in a situation where they have time to reflect, to challenge themselves, get out of their comfort zones, look at models that are alternative to what they have, whether it's social enterprises or in cases where it is applicable to look at income generating options, so that when they are caught in a difficult situation, they're better able to handle, but also to grow in their missions, to add public value in the work that they do. And another one which happened right before the pandemic, this was last year, was a partnership between AFAP and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. And what's brilliant is that we were able to support, since December 2019, just before the pandemic, over 40 institutions. So supporting them in their core and programmatic areas, but also supporting collaborations. And when the pandemic hit, of course, they were all caught off guard and had to revisit, what is it that they can do? How can they respond to their own audiences, to their communities? And some disciplines are much more hit than others. I mean, if you think of theater, film, you might say, can be online, but what do you do about dance performances? How do you bring that experience? Yes. But what the program allowed them to do is to maintain their core team and to give them a sense of stability in a time where the funding could have been shortcut and where they would have had to shut down. And so one of the unexpected positive aspects is that we managed to sustain them during a period of time where they had to rethink of a plan B and what to do to remain resilient in this time, but also beyond, whether it's doing online programming or revisiting the very activities that they need to get on track in order to sustain themselves.
Yeah, thank you very much. Absolutely. We have a question from the live stream chat, which says, can sponsors also get involved as a fourth leg to the triangle? And yeah, I guess this question was to me when I said about the triangle of supporters. Yes, of course. Why not? The sponsors would really add more. Would add to the triangle, and it would also complement our conversation about having an arranged marriage between the private and the public and culture sector in a meaningful way. Of course, sponsorship is something that is highly needed at this time.
May I add, we can change, we can alter the word and perspective slightly from sponsors to partners. I think there'll be a huge difference in the manner in which the hierarchies are broken down and everybody brings a certain value to the table.
Yes, of course. So yeah, thank you very much. This was really a very insightful and interesting conversation. I personally have enjoyed it a lot. If maybe I can give the final word to each of you to say like a closing remark, and how about we start with you, Raed?
First of all, thank you for hosting me and thank you for moderating Reem. And it was a pleasure to meet Rathi and Hiba as well. And I want to tell just every artist out there, keep your head up, stay resilient. And if there's one thing this pandemic taught us is diversify. Diversify. Nobody is resilient enough through this. So just don't put all your eggs in one basket. Just choose like 20 of them and try to survive. That's it.
Thank you, Rod. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Reem. Thank you, Reem.
Hiba, please.
Thank you, Reem, and it's been a pleasure. What I would like to end on is say that it's that this region, and specifically, has seen its share of calamities, but it's also a region that with its individual initiatives, with its collective initiatives, has been able to overcome a lot of crisis situations. This is not a new situation, and that's where one should have hope in how we've coped in the past, but also in looking for allies and looking at our own local and regional networks to learn from each other and be in solidarity with one another. And as a regional institution, again, we have the privilege to see all of this at work, and we want to continue offering the space so that the space for freedom of expression and creativity continues, because in these times, as in more tranquil times, it's very much needed.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much, Hiba. And Rathi, please.
Thank you, Reem, for moderating this session, and Raed and Hiba for being such wonderful conversationalists and co-panelists. I think that what is needed during this time, and especially from all that we spoke about resilience, is the ability to be nimble, to ability to be to reinvent yourself quickly, not to hold on to too much without letting go stubbornly, because that way is doom. So without giving up on your core principles, how do you diversify? How do you reinvent? How do you repurpose? How do you stay relevant? So in order to do that with all stakeholders, I think there's a need for great compassion, a lot of communication, and continued commitment. So without those 3 C's, I think it would be very difficult for all of us as a sector itself to go forward. So thanks very much. I've enjoyed this very much. Thank you to Global Toronto and to everyone else who's made this possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, and I would like to say thank you to Lama Hasboun as well. I know she's one of the pillars of the culture scene in Jordan, and I know how hard she works, so thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lama.
Yeah, thank you, Lama, and thank you all. And my final remark is again about communication. Thank you, Rasi, for mentioning the 3 C's. But I want to elaborate on the importance of communication, because sometimes we all do the same thing, but we don't talk to each other. And if only we talk to each other, we may have stronger and deeper and longer impact. So I would like to encourage everyone to stay connected, and let's keep in touch and learn from each other as much as we can.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So before you go, they need to take a screenshot for like a photo all of us. So let's just yeah.
Let's do exactly what we've been doing for the past hour. Just look at the screen.
Just there.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.